Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. And boy, is today's show going to be a very interesting one. I say today, but today is tomorrow, and tomorrow is today. If today is tomorrow, and tomorrow's today, and yesterday is weaving in and out, 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 and the fluffy white signs that the airplane leaves behind are drifting right in front of the waiting of the moon. He is handling the money. He is serving the food. He is now expecting callers. He is calling you dude. Little cake reference there to start the show? No? Maybe? Okay. I actually was going to tell you that today's show is especially interesting. You'll see no comments pop up on the side here. You'll see them if you're over on YouTube. If you're over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel, you will see your fellow viewers commenting back and forth. And I thought about doing a kind of bait and switch here and making you think that this is live. It's not. I was going to do it a different song reference to start the show. I was going to go, woo, it's just me, myself, and I. So we're right into that side because I got me for life. Ooh. No, okay. So today's show, it's just me. I'm sorry if that's disappointing to each and every one of you. I won't be able to engage with the discourse of people checking in, being very excited, obviously complimenting this incredible Buc-ee's shirt. I think I bought this last summer in Virginia. I may have bought it 2 years ago in Houston. But candidly, it hasn't fit me, and now it does. Good job, Russ. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to get into a bunch of stuff on today's show. I have to be in New York for work. I got brought into something that I thought I wasn't going to have to leave until probably later on Monday. So I expected to do the show live on Monday. But work came a-calling, so I got to go up to the Big Apple. And by the time the show is supposed to be live, I will be most of the way to New York City. So apologies. If this is a disappointment to you that we're not going to interact with one another in the comments, I'm sorry. Now, you can still interact with each other in the comments, and then you can send some tweets my way after the fact. And let me know over on X or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whenever the short form content goes up, you can comment there. You can, of course, leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. You can leave a 5-star rating on Spotify. If you're listening on Amazon Music or Pandora, I don't actually know what you do. No offense. You seem like lovely people, but I don't know what you can or will do. But anyway, hopefully you'll enjoy today's show. And if you don't, you get your money back. The good news for you is it's free. So, because it's good news for you and good news for me. There's no money exchanging hands. Okay. We have to get into a few things. Now, because things aren't technically live, there's one game right now in the NHL that, as of recording, has not yet settled, and it's an important one. It's Islanders Blue Jackets. There are a few minutes remaining in the third. So we're going to punt our hockey conversation until a little bit later on in the show so I can react in real time to the playoff standings, to Tankathon, to all of it, because we're taking a holistic view on where the Flyers are. But make no mistake, we do have to spend some time today on the Philadelphia Flyers, who went 3-0-0 on a 3-game road trip. Going into it last week, over on Snow the Goalie Radio, Bundy said they need all 6 points. And I said, whoa, Bundy, let's calm down a little bit. 6 points seems like a heck of that's a lot of points to get. I was like, I think 5 maybe works, 2-0-1, but then you're trying to figure out, all right, among these 3 teams that you're going to play against, all of whom have some kind of playoff implications, everybody's kind of in the race in a very weird Western Conference where one division's kind of garbaggio and the other one's an absolute murderer's row. You go, all right, well, Anaheim, they were in the Pacific Division lead, and then you go, all right, well, if it's not Anaheim, how do we feel about the Kings? The Kings are still kind of technically sort of in the race, sort of, for a wild card, sort of, because, again, that Pacific Division is sort of a mess. You go, all right, well, they're kind of in it, and then you look at the Sharks, and the Sharks were the last hope, really, for the Western Conference against your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. And it was like, well, they still also had some hopes of getting a wild card spot as well. So it seemed kind of inconceivable that given you're playing against 3 teams that needed wins, right, in their own playoff races, that the Flyers would walk away with 3 wins, but they did. So we're going to get to that later on in the show. But there are a couple of things we absolutely have to get to. I mean, there is a lot of excitement in the air, and there should be. I hate to admit when something that I've kind of hyped myself up about kind of goes by the wayside. The Phillies season starts on Thursday, which means Wednesday's show, which I don't actually know if that'll be live either. There might be a guest, there might not be. Well, I'll keep you posted. But Wednesday's show, effectively is going to set the table for what we are looking forward to, which is Phillies Rangers opening the season over at Citizens Bank Park. And that's going to be a huge game because who is going to be on the bump? Now, remember, there have been years that Aaron Nola has been the opening day starter. Of course, Zach Wheeler has largely taken over that role, but with Zach Wheeler still out because of thoracic outlet syndrome, remember the blood clotting issue late last year, and the positive, it does seem like Zach Wheeler targeting sometime in April, potentially as his return to this team, which seemed inconceivable when he went down at the end of last year. Who starts on the mound? None other than Christopher Sanchez. And you say to yourself, Christopher Sanchez has been a bona fide stud for this team. Does he deserve that opening day start? Because you think about it, you could very easily say, hey, really strong World Baseball Classic, guy who has started the season for us before on opening day, Aaron Nola, does he get the start? You're obviously not going to put Andrew Painter out there. Jesus Luzardo had a really good year last year. You say to yourself, is there a possibility that he gets the start? No, it goes to Christopher Sanchez. And the cool thing, the really, really cool thing about this is that not only did Christopher Sanchez get tapped for the opening day start, he also got himself a new contract. So we actually have two guys in this rotation that we have to have at least a moment to talk about. Most notably, I would argue, is the Christopher Sanchez extension, although we will talk about Jesus Luzardo as well. And I had somebody throw something my way, which I found kind of interesting. So the Phillies extended Christopher Sanchez. Now, there's a reworking in this, but we'll go out to the Phillies tweet first because this is where we like to go directly from the team. So here is the announcement that Christopher Sanchez has been extended by your team, your town, your Philadelphia Phillies. 6 more years of Sanchez. And they have a tweet here that says, the Phillies and left-handed pitcher Christopher Sanchez have agreed to terms on a new 6-year contract that begins in 2027. Pay attention to that. 2027 and will run through 2032 with a club option for 2033. So then you start to kind of do a little bit of mental math and you say to yourself, I may be crazy, and I've been deemed crazy before, but I feel as though the Phillies and Christopher Sanchez had already done an extension before. This really doesn't feel like a full, he was about to become a free agent next year extension. I thought he already did this. And the answer is he did. And the mechanism through which they've done this is kind of interesting. So Sanchez was extended, and the team had full control of his contract through 2030 at a $48 million deal, which seemed ludicrous. If you remember, when the Phillies signed him to that extension, we all said, hey, really cool for Sanchez to get the bag, but he's not getting the bag relative to the production he's put out there. And so you go, all right, well, if you're the Phillies, you look at it and say this is a very, low downside kind of signing, but also you don't know what the ceiling is. And so it felt like, not that it was gross, right? It didn't feel like the Phillies were taking advantage of the situation, but it certainly felt like, wow, this is probably a little bit disproportionate. The compensation that he's getting relative to what he has been for this team, which in fairness has been like a number one starter. And especially when Zach Wheeler went down, Christopher Sanchez didn't miss a beat. Like the guy had Cy Young candidacy or Cy Young hype surrounding him a lot of last year. And then even going into the playoffs, bona fide stud. He has been incredible. So we're going to touch on 2 or 3 different things here. We'll start with Jeff Passan because Jeff Passan was the one who kind of he didn't tiptoe around it. He kind of gave you a little bit more context. And you know how I am here. Context is king. So we're going to go out to Jeff Passan's tweet. It says, Christopher Sanchez's previous extension had club control through 2030 for $48 million. An extreme bargain. Indeed it was. This new deal tacks on just shy of $60 million for his ages 34 and 35 seasons. Total guarantee, as Max Gelb reported, is $107 million. So this is them, and as he notes here, this is them taking care of their ace. I will also point out to you, not only did they extend him, not only have they given him significant money, but this is the way that you're supposed to do it. I mean, I am a big proponent of the idea that if you are a team that knows you are getting well above market value, right, for what your player is achieving, your player is undervalued, right, relative to their production. I like the idea of a team saying, we could honor this contract. You've been so good. We are going to give you significantly more money, better compensation. If you remember, there was a time, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, My bad. If you remember, when Ryan Howard had a bonkers season and he was still on a ridiculously low contract, the Phillies and Ryan Howard, I believe, went to arbitration or was set to go to arbitration. And the Phillies were like, yo, we'll set the record. Like, we'll set the all-time arbitration record to do right by you. But however, we're also not going to pay you necessarily like what you would get on the open market as a free agent. This is a little bit different. This is 100% the Phillies looking at what they were paying him and saying, you are our ace, all right? We love Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler, great guy. We love Zach Wheeler. However, Zach Wheeler doesn't exactly have a 5-year window left, at least as he's communicated to this point, and 8 years or 7 years or whatever. In fact, like Zach Wheeler had been pretty adamant up until last year before he had the blood clot issue and thoracic outlet syndrome. Before that, he had said, 2026 is my last season. Like, when this contract is over, I'm done. Now, I would love to have a conversation with Zach Wheeler, or I would love for the media to ask Zach Wheeler once he is back and obviously gets that first start under his belt. How's he feeling about that now? Like, he missed out on a postseason run last year, right? And we don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. You obviously hope that Zach Wheeler is going to be a bona fide stud, as he always has been, and always has been since he put on those red pinstripes for the first time. I would want to imagine that he's going to want to re-up for at least one more year. Last year had it kind of stolen from him. Does that maybe make him look at it and say, you know what, as long as I can still pitch effectively, I'm happy to do like a year-by-year thing with the Phillies. And let's be clear, if he's even remotely close to the guy he was before he got hurt, before he went down with thoracic outlet syndrome, the Phillies are going to want to have him back year by year. You'll deal with that, and that's fine. But back to Sanchez. He's been your ace. I mean, while Wheeler was out, Sanchez was 100% your ace. You could make the argument Sanchez has been as good or better than virtually every other pitcher in this rotation. You could make the case that he was a top 5, top 7, whatever you want to say, pitcher last year in the National League. If he were to hit the open market, he would, I'm not saying set a record, but I think you would probably see Christopher Sanchez get over $30 million a year, right? To be an ace for a team. Also doesn't hurt that he's a southpaw. So this is a good deal for the Phillies. This is them doing right by their player. This is them showing that they're not afraid to spend money, which is a really big thing, especially when you consider that John Middleton has kind of been under fire, I think, from the fan base, especially because of the offseason that Dave Dombrowski had or didn't have. There have been all these questions about whether or not Middleton has put some kind of salary constraints on Dombrowski, which is always interesting too. Like, it's hard to kind of like segment this conversation, but like the Phillies did kind of, at different points in this past, like, let's say 12 to 18 months, they've had these moments where you're like, are you really all in? Like John Middleton once said, I want my fucking trophy back. So if he does, like, does he really though? Because if he does, you have to spend money. And when you see Dave Dombrowski go out and the best he could do for this lineup is Adolis Garcia, who we want to believe in, right? We want to believe in Adolis Garcia. Dude's got biceps that are like the size of like 1.5 of my thighs. And I've got soccer thighs. So like, these are still some hefty thighs. But when that's the best you could do, you openly question, like, is he being constrained? Is he being financially strapped by the owner? Then the Bo Bichette thing came out this offseason. You're like, oh, they're willing to spend money on Bo Bichette, which they view as an upgrade, probably at third base, right, over Alec Bohm. That doesn't come to pass. They don't manage to get anybody of note in here in this lineup. Bryce Harper complains about it going into the WBC, all that lovely stuff. So the question was, are they willing to spend money? And then, while the lineup isn't getting addressed, you watch Ranger Suarez, who I think every Phillies fan, every single one, would have loved to have seen come back. Ranger Suarez was an absolutely wonderful guy, apparently, in that clubhouse. Ranger Suarez was a guy who not only performed well in the regular season, but was a stone-cold killer in the postseason. You don't know if a guy who does well in the regular season can translate their game to the postseason. You don't know if they can stand up to when the lights are the brightest or not, and Ranger Suarez could. So I was actively worried and concerned that, oh my God, if this finance thing is really a thing, are they going to lose Ranger Suarez? And they did, right? Suarez got really great money from Boston. And we will always give Ranger Suarez credit that apparently the Mets were willing to offer a lot of money as well. And Ranger Suarez said, nah, goes to Boston. Totally other league. We love Ranger Suarez. We wish him the best in Boston. But I was concerned. Are they going to be willing to splash cash when they would have to? Now, I didn't look at Christopher Sanchez as a guy that they were going to have to extend or give money to. They proactively decided to do that, which is great. But then there was another guy who also got the bag. And I don't remember if we talked about it on the show or not. And so if we didn't, then we probably should. But Jesus Luzardo, man, him getting $135 million this offseason was gigantic. Huge. Don't forget, the Phillies picked this dude up in December of 2024. He's only pitched one season in Philadelphia. He had a really rough stretch where people thought that he might have been tipping pitches last year. And other than that, Luzardo was really, really good. But he got a 5-year deal, a week and a half ago? So you had Luzardo get the bag. He got significant money. I think it was was it $135 million, I want to say was the contract over 5 years. Luzardo gets a lot of money. And then you see the Phillies go out and they actively spend to extend Christopher Sanchez, give him $60 million over that 2 extra years or whatever that they're gonna pay him. I had somebody send me a DM who will remain anonymous because maybe he's gonna put his comment over on YouTube right now and you guys can interact. But there was somebody who DM'd me and they were like, hey, do you view the fact that the Phillies were willing to do this for Sanchez and Luzardo, do you view that as kind of an indictment on what they thought about Ranger Suarez? As in, do you feel like the Phillies maybe had this idea in their heads that this guy, Ranger Suarez, who the fans really like, we like him too, but if we have to make an investment in the future, we're happy to do that with Christopher Sanchez, who's truly a number one. And Jesus Luzardo, who, again, people with a lot more baseball knowledge than yours truly, are saying could maybe have dark horse Cy Young candidacy vibes going about him and hype. Do the Phillies look at those two and say, oh, they are significantly more valuable to us than Ranger Suarez? I'm not sure that's what it is. I do think that the Phillies probably looked at Jesus Luzardo versus Ranger Suarez heads up, and they made a determination based on a few things. So in the case of Ranger Suarez, you have to remember, and I'm a big Ranger Suarez guy, but Ranger Suarez did miss time. The idea of him being able to stay healthy for entire seasons, not exactly the greatest thing. Here's the thing with Suarez. He's 30 years old, right? And if you look at Jesus Luzardo, who they acquired less than 2 years ago, it was December of 2024, they looked at Luzardo and they're like, all right, Jesus Luzardo is 28, so he's 2 years younger. And if we're going to give an extension of 5 years or whatever, do we want to do that, right? Do we want to give a 5-year extension to a 28-year-old or a 30-year-old? And I think that might have been part of it. And I think the Phillies probably also look at Luzardo as maybe having higher upside overall than Ranger Suarez did. Maybe that's part of it. I'm not going to say that for sure. That's 1,000% what we saw. But it's kind of part of it. I'm thinking that maybe they believe that Luzardo is going to have a higher ceiling and maybe be a more electric starter long-term than Suarez would have been. Maybe the Phillies were worried that Suarez was going to break down, miss time. You can't allocate a ton of resourcing to a guy that you didn't believe was going to be able to stay consistently healthy. I don't know. I really don't know. But what I can tell you is this. If you look at what Andrew Painter has done so far this spring and the kind of bounce back that Andrew Painter has had and him looking more like the guy that this team has made untouchable year after year, trade deadline after trade deadline, offseason after offseason, if Painter can come in and not pitch as well as Suarez, but if he can come in and pitch like a solid number 3 or number 4, it probably lessens the pain and lessens the blow of losing Suarez. Now, I said this last week, and I probably said it the week before, maybe even the week before, and months ago. If you let Suarez go, who has performed so well in the postseason, you better hope that whoever takes his spot in the rotation in the postseason can stand up to that pressure. And the thing is, we won't know until the playoffs. We won't know until the Phillies have hopefully made the playoffs in the fall. That's when we're going to get a feel for, all right, who's taking that spot? You would assume, right, if Wheeler comes back, and Wheeler is Wheeler. You got Wheeler, you got Sanchez, and you probably have Luzardo. Those are probably your 3. And you want that 4th starter, you're probably hoping, right, that it's going to be Andrew Painter. And if it's not, then it's Aaron Nola. And if Painter's not that guy, then the question is, like, did they put a limit, an innings limit on him? Or did things just not work out the way that you wanted to? Or are you afraid of, this guy in his first year in the majors coming up and having to play in those or pitch in those high leverage moments? I don't know. We'll find out. But this whole thing's interesting to me. I got to say, for as down on the Phillies as I have been, and as down on the offseason as I've been, which I am, I do think that the bullpen is better now. I think I even said this a while ago when I was kind of comparing position groups to position groups. You look at the lineup, it's largely unchanged. The infield is the same. The outfield is roughly similar, right? Garcia replaces Castellanos, can be streaky, can be very hit or miss. I think Garcia will hit for more power. I think you'll see more home runs than Castellanos had. I would expect that there's going to be a lot of chasing. Hopefully not. Seems like Kevin Long has kind of reworked Garcia's swing. Maybe that helps him find a little bit more consistency. Swell. Crawford, I would like to imagine that Crawford in this rookie campaign is going to be a really steady bat for this team. Maybe going to steal some bases for you, be a threat on the base paths. There was a hit that he had a few days ago where smashes a ball down the right field line. It goes into the corner, and I mean, like, he flew to third base. He practically levitated all the way to third base. So Justin Crawford, can he be as good or better than some combination of Bader and Marsh in center? I would hope the answer to that is yes. Your position players really haven't changed that much. It came out today, or for you guys listening on Sunday, that Rafael Marchand made the team, so now Garrett Stubbs is kind of in limbo. He might get DFA'd. They might try to work out a trade. But like for the most part, the lineup is largely unchanged. The rotation, you're swapping Suarez for Painter. There was a big concern on my part earlier in the offseason when we didn't know what the timeline for Wheeler was going to be. But since it sounds like he's coming back in April, if you're swapping out Suarez for Painter and you really believe in Painter, I'll roll with it. The bullpen is probably where this team is the best. And it is the place that they are decidedly better now than they were a year ago, if for no other reason than they have Juan Duran. Duran being here for an entire season is going to be fundamental, right? It is going to be a fundamentally different experience with the bullpen, one has to hope, with Duran here to start the season than kind of the hodgepodge that they went through a lot of last year. So that, to me, is another positive. So good job. Now, for as down as I've been on this offseason, and I certainly would have liked this offseason more with Bo Bichette in camp playing third base. I probably would have felt better about it. I will allow myself to be open to being hurt again by the Philadelphia Phillies. I am now allowing myself, I am opening myself up to be hurt by the Phillies again. And maybe I'll regret it, but maybe I won't. As I've mentioned before, I'm a very simple guy to please when it comes to sports in the summer, right? I have been through plenty of bad Phillies seasons in my life where the summer feels like it drags. The Phillies come on the radio and you're like, do I have to? I would much rather listen to a Phillies team and watch a Phillies team that is a bona fide contender and feels like game in and game out they can win each and every game. I would much rather have that through the summer. It honestly just makes the summer feel better. And given the fact that the Philadelphia Union have lost every single game they've played so far, 5 losses in Major League Soccer, which we'll talk about here in a second, very briefly, but we will talk about in a second. I'm not feeling a lot of great vibes coming off the Union. And if they're going to suck all summer, then the Phillies are going to get all of my attention or most of my attention. So you got that. So I'm feeling pretty good about the Phillies. I did mention the Union, though, and there are 2 things that I got to touch on here really quickly. One is a comment from Alejandro Bedoya, and then one is something that is the most ridiculously stupid thing. So where do I go first? I'm going to go with the ridiculously stupid thing, and then I'll go to what's happening around the team. So as we have covered on the show at different points, the Philadelphia Union sporting director, Ernst Tanner, was suspended pending investigation, right? Major League Soccer and the Union, there was an investigation a while back about him allegedly saying things that were racist, homophobic, and sexist. I think I got all 3. Sexist, misogynistic. We'll make those interchangeable. So he had these comments that were deemed inappropriate. There was an investigation. Nothing came of it. Then there was another report that came out that led to Major League Soccer reopening the investigation. And then we went for a few months without really hearing anything about what was going on with Ernst Tanner. If you remember, that suspension, I believe, that reopening of the investigation happened during the MLS playoffs last year when the Union were coming off of the Supporter Shield, right, where they had the most points in all of Major League Soccer. And they went in as a favorite or one of the favorites to win MLS Cup. As they were in the midst of the playoffs, this investigation reopened. Ernst Tanner gets suspended. They're doing the whole thing, right? Or they're investigating it. I don't know if they said he was suspended. He wasn't allowed to perform his duties, though, while the investigation was open. Then we found out about a week or so ago that Major League Soccer was suspending him without pay, presumably from when they made the announcement through, I believe it was June 1st, or it's May 31st or whatever. So he's still suspended for a couple more months. Okay. That's to kind of set the stage, right? So the union are without their top executive, the guy who typically goes out, scouts these players and makes the decisions, makes the transfers, brings these players in. If you're not familiar, transfer is akin to a trade, except you don't send back another player. It's typically you pay a fee to get that player and bring them in. Okay. So Ernst Tanner supposedly has not been doing anything, has not been involved in any of the decisions made this offseason, to let Kai Wagner go, to send him off to Europe, or to send Ty Baribo to D.C., and we've covered this a couple of times. So Ernst Tanner is out until June 1st or whatever. Well, the union have a supporters group, right? And so the supporter section down in the River End at Subaru Park, if you've ever been down there, the people who sing and they do their songs, right? There are actually two now, right? There's Keystone Ultras, who are kind of in the corner, and then there's the Sons of Ben, and they've got their thing. And, if I could show you, I have Sons of Ben scarves all up around here. See, I probably seem like a crazy person sometimes, right? I don't talk about the union all that much. I don't talk about the Sons of Ben all that much. When I do, I'm typically angry, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 scarves of the Sons of Ben around in my office. Part of that is because I was a season ticket holder for a year. I think I was a season ticket holder for a year, but I think I became a member of Sons of Ben 2 years after the team was founded. This one's 2015. That one, I think, was from the year I was a season ticket holder. I think that one was 2013 or so. And I had seats in the River End, I think 4 rows off the field or something behind the goal with my buddy Sam. We went in and we got season tickets together. And then a few years later, I started doing freelance writing for Crossing Broad, and I covered a few union games and all that lovely stuff. It was great. But the Sons of Ben have always been very perplexing to me. I don't fully get it. It's almost like a group of people who take themselves too seriously. And I think that this is just a thing with supporters sections across Major League Soccer, but it feels like with the union, it's kind of a different level. I remember being part of a group that once carried a casket outside of Subaru Park when we were very fed up with the management for not doing a good job of building a team. And so it was, Nick Stakewicz was the guy at the time. And so the Sons of Ben put together this casket, right? And it was that he was the death of the union, the death of, all this stuff, right? And so big group carried the casket up to the gates of the stadium, had to leave it there. There were all kinds of conversations about, do we not even go into the game? Do we just go no supporter section, or the supporters stay on the outside and they don't go in the stadium? Because I think it was a nationally televised game. And the idea was you're trying to show that the most rabid fans don't support the team anymore because ownership has totally disappeared, right? Jay Sugarman has disappeared, and that the front office wasn't doing a good job and all that lovely stuff. So I remember those days, right? And then it was a year ago. I think it was a year and a half ago, I came on this show and I was very angry because I didn't think that the union had really done a lot again, right? Ernst Tanner is this incredible executive who finds a guy in the fifth, I'm joking here sort of, but he'll find them in the fifth division of Algeria, and he'll pluck a guy out of there that you've never heard of from a team that I'm pretty sure if you threw into create a team mode or something, couldn't even come up with the name. He pulls a guy out of there, and then that guy gets in this lineup, and somehow they blossom into being a 3-time All-Star, and then the union sell the guy off to Europe or off to another MLS team, and it's crazy, right? Because Ernst Tanner is amazing at what he does. But these allegations were out there about sexist, racist, misogynistic, what else? Pretty much any ist you could have, except ableist. I don't think Ernst Tanner was accused of being ableist. I think that might be the only thing. But he had all these accusations against him. And so, of course, the Sons of Ben had to weigh in, right? Major League Soccer says he's suspended. He'll come back June 1st. We opened the investigation. There was an investigation, right? Team did an investigation, found no wrongdoing. Then there was a national report. Major League Soccer looked into it, and they said, hey, based on our findings, he's suspended through June 1st. Major League Soccer said that. And yet, that was not good enough for the fine folks over at the Sons of Ben. And I have to imagine that there are people from Sons of Ben past who have DM'd me in the past to also complain about the current or the group from like a year ago, year and a half ago, right? I have to imagine that a lot of those people are also going to look at this statement that the Sons of Ben put out and also roll their eyes like they did when the Sons of Ben came out after a lackluster offseason last year, the year before, whatever it was, and said, well, we met with ownership or we met with the front office and they assured us that moves are going to be made. It was like, they're not going to drop Boku bucks. Anyway, Sons of Ben had to weigh in because it would have been too much to just say, all right, cool, yeah, we're going to rock and roll with what Major League Soccer decided to do. And this isn't a letter where they say, oh, we think this is total bullshit. Like, you need to let our guy Ernst Tanner out. Free Ernst. Because I bet you that there would have been Sons of Ben leadership in the past who would have said, free Ernst. Now, so here you go. This is what the Sons of Ben put out. To our supporters, Philadelphia Union et al. The Sons of Ben Board of Directors is deeply troubled by the findings that led to MLS's disciplinary action against Ernst Tanner and by the lack of transparency surrounding them. They're deeply troubled, guys. The Sons of Ben reject racism, homophobia, sexism, harassment, intimidation, and abuse in all forms. Those are not abstract values to us, and they are not boxes to check in a statement. They are the basic standards of decency, and they must apply everywhere this club operates, from the river end to the front office. Nice imagery there. Kudos to them there. And by the way, we're not mocking. We're not making fun of racism, homophobia, sexism, harassment, intimidation, or abuse in all forms. We are making fun of the Sons of Ben. MLS has concluded that league and club leadership standards were violated. This is serious. Supporters should not be asked to absorb that finding with only vague explanations and limited public accountability. Due process cannot exist without transparency, accountability, and a clear commitment to the values this league claims to uphold. Supporters deserve more than silence and ambiguity. Oh my God. The Sons of Ben is formally communicating these concerns to club leadership, coordinating with fellow supporters groups, and continuing to press for answers rather than allowing this to be buried beneath match results and PR language. This is not the end of the conversation. It is the beginning. I feel like that scene in Game of Thrones when they're looking at the tower. And he says, it's Sir Arthur Dane and Ned Stark, and they're toe-to-toe. He says, now this ends. And Ned Stark goes, no. Now it begins. That's what this reminds me of. Except, like, this is not the Tower of Joy. This is just Russ Joy saying the Sons of Ben sound like idiots here. Listen, you can do whatever the hell you want. You put out all the letters you want. Major League Soccer reopen an investigation where the union were first like, doesn't seem like a lot to go off. And then after months and months and months of doing interviews and bringing in people and all that lovely stuff, the league said, yeah, there's probably some truth to at least some of this. He's suspended until June. And now the Sons of Ben are like, no, we need details. We need details. This is almost like, now, I don't want to make a comparison because I don't want the Sons of Ben to get all huffy. It's actually not why. I'm just thinking about it. I don't want to downplay, right? Because the claims are pretty awful, right? And if you read the story or if you saw the initial reporting, the things that Ernst Tanner said, definitely not something I would condone or that many of you would not condone. And at the same time, why does a supporter section feel like they deserve some kind of answer beyond what the league has provided? Like, what are you actually trying to get out of it? It feels very virtual signaling to me. And maybe it's not. Maybe you out there, maybe you're like, hey, we do want some details. Did they find that the sexist statement against the referee, I think it was a woman referee that had something said. Did the league determine that there was a sexist remark against a female ref? And that was true. Well, okay, how does that make you feel? If there was a racist thing said, how does it make you feel? If it was about a player or a ref or whatever it was, how does it make you feel? If there was a homophobic slur used, how does it make you feel? Do we need those details because they say, well, we didn't find that he said anything sexist, but he did say something racist and homophobic. Does that change your outrage relative to if he said, well, he said nothing homophobic, but he did say some stuff that was racist and sexist? Or if they say, well, he didn't say anything, which one did I omit? He didn't say anything racist, but he did say something sexist and homophobic. How does that make you feel? Like, do we have a sliding scale here of like where the outrage lies or no? Is it he said those things and no one heard them? He said them and they were heard by somebody in the press box. He said them, they were heard by players. What exactly do the Sons of Ben want to get out of it? It feels like the Sons of Ben felt like they had the need to insert themselves into a situation in which they probably don't belong. Now, they can certainly put out a statement that says, we as a collective group, as a group of supporters, don't like what he was alleged to have said, and we're not thrilled that the league hasn't been transparent. We are actively asking for a bit more context about what was found. That's it. But this like 4-paragraph thing, this bloviating, this soliloquy that the Sons of Ben put together is ridiculous. Supporters should not be asked to observe the findings with only vague explanations and limited public accountability. What does that mean? They shouldn't be asked to absorb that finding? What the hell does that mean? If you're a fan and you go out to the Sons of Ben and you listen to them like sing many of the songs that they've been singing for a decade, do you listen to the Sons of Ben and then just decide, you know what? I don't think I can get behind this. I don't think I'm going to get behind Come On You Boys in Blue. I don't think I'm going to get behind that one because the Sons of Ben didn't outwardly speak out against Major League Soccer's lack of transparency. You know what? You boys may be in blue, but I'm not going to tell you, come on, boys in blue. Like, what are we doing? Come on. Okay. Philadelphia Union. Now, there's another Union point. I can't believe it. Yeah. I got another Union thing. And this is just really quick. Like, things are bad for the Philadelphia Union right now. Like, really, really bad. Alejandro Bedoya was asked about how things are going right now. And it ain't great. So he had a quote post-game this weekend that it is absolutely bananagrams. This team coming off of being the Supporter Shield winning squad, it has all fallen apart for this team. And I just want to hear really briefly from Alejandro Bedoya, who's one of the most respected guys in the league, certainly in that locker room, had been for a long time a stalwart of the men's national team. Here's Alejandro Bedoya, and we won't do the whole thing, but we'll listen to a little bit. Here's Alejandro Bedoya just talking about the struggles that they've had as a team. So this part is very interesting, and it's also true. And there's a guy who's 38. He turns 39 at the end of April. That's a guy. You got to be honest here. Like, I know he's a player, but this dude sounds like a coach, which isn't a bad thing. And he probably, I would expect, is either going to transition to being a coach or somebody on a TV panel in the not too distant future. If I were Fox, I'd probably have a conversation about having Alejandro Bedoya on at least some version of a panel in this upcoming World Cup. But we'll get back to this. So Bedoya is giving you a very good, cogent answer here as to why the Union have struggled. And then also a little bit of context that, like, this league can't be forgiving. Anything can happen in the playoffs. We've seen it. So there's a guy, again, who's played here for long enough to know what the right way to play in Philadelphia is, what the wrong way to play in Philadelphia is, and ultimately, he's a guy who you kind of have to lean on. And this is a team that has a lot of new pieces to it. And again, I'm not going to do a whole breakdown here of this team to this point and who's been here for a long time and who hasn't. But there was another quote that Bedoya had where he said, if I say what I really want to say, I'm gonna get in trouble. Right? So I think that there's clearly a frustration among some of the vets on this team with some of the new guys that have come in, and maybe they haven't bought in the same way. I don't know exactly what the overall beef here is. Did guys not take their training seriously enough? I don't know. But this is the other guy that I wanted you to hear from just really quickly. And again, if you're a Philadelphia Union fan, this has to kind of hit you hard. So here, Kai Wagner's no longer here. Wagner's a guy that a lot of people thought could have played in Europe for a long time and stayed here, stayed loyal to this team. Andre Blake is right in that same category, a guy who could have gone and played in Europe, has stayed here with the Union in MLS. Listen to Andre Blake, your goalkeeper, your guy who has been one of the best at his position for about a decade now. Here's Andre Blake. That's it. Short, sweet, to the point. He's never had this kind of struggle with this team in this franchise. And remember, Andre Blake has been here with some teams that have not spent money or has been here with teams that have not exactly done particularly well. And yet, he's looking at it going, geez, guys, somebody's got to do a little bit better than this. This is pretty freaking brutal. That to me is a concern. Okay, last thing I want to get to, really simply, has to do with your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. And I mentioned off the top of the show, the Flyers were in a spot going into the weekend and going into that West Coast swing where you said to yourself, I'm not loving where the Flyers are because they've got this 3-game road trip against the Ducks, against the Kings, and against the Sharks, all of whom were still very much in the playoff race in the Western Conference. And you may have said to yourself, I'm not totally loving the idea of the Flyers having enough to get it done if they're going to try to get to the playoffs. Now, I've been bringing this up. I've been trying to take this holistic look at this from both sides. If you're a playoff person or if you happen to be somebody who wanted to see this Flyers team effectively tank or at least kind of go backwards and try to get a better draft pick, I've been pretty transparent here for a while now about I think that those days, if you're one of the people hoping for the Flyers to kind of fall back to the rest of the pack, I think that is very clearly done. Now, I'm going to show you two things because we have to take a look at the playoffs, right? Playoffs. We have to take a look at the playoffs. We have to take a look also at the tank standings. If you really do want to be one of those people who's going to convince yourself that it's a good idea and that, things are going to somehow result in the Flyers getting a better draft pick, which just candidly, guys, I think that ship has absolutely sailed. I think that if you're hoping that the Flyers are going to somehow end up at the 8th pick or the 8th best odds of getting the number 1 pick, I think that is very much DED dead. But I want to take a look at this with you guys because I think that this is an absolutely fascinating place the Flyers have found themselves in because after winning 3 straight games on a West Coast swing, and I think 7 consecutive road games overall, here's where the Philadelphia Flyers are. And now the game that had not gone final at the start of the show now is final, so we can give you the updated look. And there's another Metropolitan team that is now in the playoffs. If the season were to end right now, Detroit is now out of the playoffs looking in because the Islanders beat the Blue Jackets. Now, that has them level on points. Now, there's a tiebreaker in play here, but most notably, the Blue Jackets have a game in hand on the Islanders. They've played 70 games. The Islanders have played 71. But take a look at this. So the Flyers, 13 games remaining. As things stand right now, they are 5 points back of the Islanders or the Blue Jackets. It doesn't really matter. Metropolitan, wild card, doesn't matter. If you wanted to look at where they are relative to the first wild card, they are 6 points back of Boston. But really, take a gander at the Islanders and the Blue Jackets because the Flyers have 2 games in hand on the Islanders and they have 1 game in hand on the Blue Jackets. And the reason that matters, of course, as I think we're all pretty well aware, is that the Flyers still have a game remaining against the Columbus Blue Jackets. That'll actually be on Tuesday night in Philadelphia, which is shaping up to be a hell of a game. We said that you're looking at a lot of 4-point games between now and the end of the season. That Blue Jackets game is about as big as it gets, but that ain't it. 2 of the next 3 games include the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings. There is a game in between that cannot be a trap game. That's Thursday night at home. That game is against the Chicago Blackhawks, who have nothing to play for. That can't be a trap game. The Flyers have to come out with their hair on fire on Tuesday. They've got to pick up 2 points against Columbus. And if they do, well, this whole thing gets even more interesting. Now, it will matter in the grand scheme of things. You're going to go Blue Jackets. You're home against Blue Jackets, home against Blackhawks, at Detroit, big game. Detroit's still ahead of you in the standings here. Home against Dallas. That is a game that I do not see a way that they could win. That is easily, to me, a regulation loss. They won't be able to have many of those if they're going to try to collect as many of the 26 points remaining as they can, but that is a thing. They are then in Washington, and as you could see here, Washington, where are you, Washington? Right behind you. So they are probably still going to have something to play with at the very end of March. Then you are home against the Red Wings. That's the second of 3 matchups you have against the Red Wings before the end of the season. Then April 3rd, you are at the Islanders. So again, when you're looking at this and you're looking at the teams ahead of you, the Islanders are also on there. Oh, but what's that, Russ? What's that? So you're at the Islanders on April 3rd. 2 days later, Sunday afternoon, home against the Boston Bruins on Easter Sunday. Another team that's ahead of you in the standings. Then you are at the Devils. Devils are behind you. I don't know if the Devils are looking at this as being a totally logical thing for them to chase down. We'll see where they're at come April 7th. Maybe things are different. Then you're at Detroit. Again, they are currently ahead of you. They are very much in a playoff spot. Then you are in playoff contention. You are then at Winnipeg. At Winnipeg is an interesting one because as of right now, if you take a look at where Winnipeg is relative to everyone else in their division, Winnipeg is in a spot where, like, they theoretically are within 5 points. Well, not theoretically, they actually are 5 points back of Nashville with a chance to maybe get a little bit closer. So Winnipeg could possibly still be in it. So there's potential playoff ramifications there. Then you're home against Carolina, which is a tough game. And then you close out the season against Montreal at home. And again, as you look here, Montreal, 3rd in the Atlantic Division. But even if you were to look at it, like if things go a little bit helter-skelter, maybe Boston gets hot and Montreal gets pulled down, Montreal is still very much a team that you would have to beat. So you look at all of that, right? The only games that really don't have relevance in terms of like the Eastern Conference, at least, are Chicago, which you need to beat, Dallas, which I would assume is going to be a loss, at Winnipeg, which they may still have something to play for, but you're going to be out west. And then you have that game against Carolina, which could be like running into a total bone saw. And other than that, you've got the Blue Jackets, the Red Wings 3 times, the Bruins, the Capitals who are right behind you, the Islanders who are in front of you. This is a stretch where if the Flyers were to make the playoffs, I'm not going to throw down beaucoup bucks on the Flyers to somehow pull off a first-round upset. But if the Flyers are able to close this thing out over the last 13 games of the season and leapfrog Ottawa, leapfrog probably Detroit and or the Islanders or Blue Jackets, whoever, and get into one of those final wild card spots. Wild. If the Flyers can somehow, and it's totally plausible, look at the standings right now. If you look at this, they are 5 points behind the Islanders and 5 points behind the Blue Jackets. If the Flyers can somehow get that 3rd spot in the Metropolitan, which felt like an absolute insane idea a few weeks ago, if they can do that, look at the Penguins. Penguins are only 6 points ahead of you. If the Flyers can somehow get the 2nd or 3rd spot in the Metropolitan Division to go into the playoffs, I'm not telling you that they can absolutely win a playoff matchup. I'm not insane, all right? I know that I'm already kind of talking myself back off the ledge or on the ledge. I don't know. Can you go off the ledge in a good way? I don't know. But if you look at this thing, there have been dumber things that have happened. And right now, based on seeding, based on where everybody's at right now, The second wild card would play against Carolina as things are currently set up. So the Islanders would play Carolina. So if nothing else changes in the standings and the Flyers were to leapfrog and take that second wild card spot from the Islanders, they would play Carolina in the first round. Good luck. Okay? Good luck. If the Flyers were to take where Boston is, I don't actually know. Does this work out? I guess it still does. Boston, where they're at, they would play Buffalo in the first round. Buffalo has been absolutely on fire. Like, Buffalo's been a fever dream for weeks now, months. Good for the Sabres. But if you look at where Columbus is at, in that third spot in the division, as of right now, Columbus would play Pittsburgh. So you're looking at the third place team in the Met against the second place team in the Met. And if that happens, right, if you're the Flyers and you play the Blue Jackets, or you're the Flyers and you play the Penguins, potentially, right, you might actually be able to win a first round series. I'm not saying you will, but you certainly like your chances against teams in your division. Now, the Islanders, to me, they present and pose a little bit of a different kind of challenge. But, like, honestly, we know where I stand. We know where I stood about, like, where things really should go this year. And that a top 5, top 6 player ultimately would be a good thing for this team. Well, that is very much out of the running now. And I could show you where they are at right now in terms of tankathon. But, like, it ain't happening, right? Look at this, and look at where your fly guys are at 80 points, and look at where you got to get to go if you're going to be in that sweet spot that I've been talking about, somewhere around number 8 where Seattle is. That's a 9-point differential with 13 games to play. You are not going to leapfrog backwards Washington, New Jersey, LA, San Jose, and Florida, and or Seattle. You're not doing that. So, like, this to me is over. If you've been hoping for that spot, unless the bottom falls out in a truly psychotic way, Rick Tocchet loses the locker room in a way that, like, Torts did, but maybe even worse 2 years ago. That's the only way that I could conceive of. Or Dan Vladar gets hurt, which we don't want. We don't want to put that in the universe. We love Darth Vladar. We don't want him to get hurt. Those are the only two things that could potentially lead to this team cratering so much that you'd end up here. This ain't happening, which all of a sudden makes this seem legit and plausible. And for all the people who have spent however much time saying, Russ just hates the Flyers. He just wants the Flyers to lose. I don't want the Flyers to lose. I want the Flyers to win. I like going to the arena, and when I say goodbye to my children and my wife before I drive down at least an hour and a half, right, to get down to the arena, and sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's 2.5. It depends on how the Schuylkill and the Blue Route like to play. Before I say bye to them and I go down to the arena, I hope to myself, hopefully the Flyers have a good game tonight. It'd be nice to get to celebrate a win and to go on post-game and, you know, we're hyping the people up as they go get on the elevator to leave, right? I would love nothing more than for this to be a playoff team. I got really excited back in December. I was like, wow, it feels like it's a foregone conclusion. The Flyers are going to make the playoffs. Then January happened. January got really weird. January now kind of feels like an anomaly, right? The way that this team just went and won 3 games out of 3 on the West Coast, all of a sudden you start to feel like, oh, maybe January was just this weird anomaly. We can't explain it. We don't know why it happened or how it happened, but okay. And then Vladar got hurt at one point, and like that you can tie specifically to Vladar getting hurt. Their drop-off in play, Vladar being out, makes all the sense in the world. If this team is going to play as well as they did out west, and this team is going to have an Owen Tippett that is playing in a way that he never really has. We've seen it the past month and a half. If Owen Tippett is going to play with this kind of confidence, team is fundamentally different. If Michkov is going to rediscover himself and being on that right side is going to help him rediscover the success that he had last year, this team is going to be on a different level. Like, there's a lot to get excited about here. And in theory, you're keeping an eye on the college game. You're keeping an eye on Michigan State. You are keeping in your mind that if Michigan State gets eliminated, Porter Martone's going to be here. He'll be here for, could he play 8 games here? Could he play 7 games here? If he leads Michigan State to a national championship, I think he would only be able to play 1 game here in Philadelphia prior to the playoffs. Now, in theory, he could. They could have him play 1 game to end the season, and then they could roll into the playoffs with young Porter Martone. That'd be a hell of a boost. You want to get people excited about the playoffs. The fact that the Flyers would make the playoffs would be exciting enough for this fan base. You also give them Porter Martone to look forward to. The place will be full. That place will be bumping. And again, I know I'm playing out kind of like this best case scenario, but like, given the fact that most of your games remaining are against teams that are either right in front of you or right behind you in the playoff standings, if you are successful over these next 13 games, I think it's a very good chance that you can end up there, where Pittsburgh is, second in the Met, or there, third in the Met, where the Blue Jackets are. And the idea of playing somebody from within your division and avoiding a Buffalo or avoiding a Tampa, well, all of a sudden, that is very interesting. That's quite an attractive proposition. So,
in summary, Your Honor,
I'm very much team make the playoffs. There is no conceivable path to me where this team can fall back, barring a catastrophic injury or cratering of the locker room, which would ultimately be terrible for this group and for the young guys on this team. I am officially removing my flag from team get that draft pick because I don't think it's possible. And I'm now going to shift it over here to fuck it, make the playoffs, put the flag in the ground. And I think everybody should get behind it. I do. Because as I pointed out many times, even if you wanted to live in the world of the draft pick, there are just far too many teams for you to have to hurdle in the opposite direction. And I just don't see it. I really, truly do not see it. Now, if we get to a point where the Flyers lose to Columbus and they lose that first game to Detroit and they're sitting around that 80 points, maybe they're at 81, and you see teams like the Kings and the Devils and the Caps, and they win 2 games, or they get 5 out of 6 points over that stretch, or you see San Jose get 5 out of 6, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, now it's a 4-point gap or a 5-point gap between the Flyers at 14 and like San Jose at 10, something like that. Well, okay, then maybe we're having a different conversation. Maybe I have to take the flag from here and then put it back over into, I don't know. But I will tell you this. I don't root for this team to lose. If I'm going to go down to this arena and spend these nights away from my wife and children, I want this team to win. Okay? I do. At this point in the year, I want them to win. So damn it, go out, make the playoffs. It sounds like Travis Konechny's quote from last week has resonated, that no matter what happens, he wants all those other teams in the playoff hunt right now. He wants all of those teams, all the guys on this list right here. He wants these teams to be aware that if they slip, the Flyers are going to be there. The Flyers are coming for them. And it seemed like an absolute insane concept to have. Even a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the Flyers are actually going to be close enough. They're going to be in decent enough playoff or reach of the playoffs of being able to get in. Yeah, I mean, just like based on how things are going right now, it kind of feels like they might. I will also point out to you, the strength of schedule is maybe the one thing where you're concerned. However, you keep in mind that the teams that you're playing are ones that are in and around where you're at. Here's the strength of the schedule to close out the year. Boston has the toughest strength of the schedule. Columbus, who you're chasing, second toughest. Islanders, who you're also chasing, third toughest. The Flyers technically have the fifth toughest strength of schedule in the entire NHL. But look who they have, right? This is skewed at least somewhat. Dallas and Carolina, tough games. Make no mistake. Montreal will be a tough game. Boston, you're chasing. Columbus, you're chasing. Detroit, you're chasing 3 times. I mean, I'm not going to say, I think some of you might remember, if you're a 90s kid, you might remember a little movie called Angels in the Outfield. And little PJ, he had a thing that he would say, right? Little PJ had a thing that he said a lot. And every time he said it, it would warm the cockles of my heart. I think you remember that line. Every time PJ would talk and he would see something crazy happen, he would look whoever it was dead in the eye and he would say, "It could happen. It could happen." I have to make that a sound drop on the show. But PJ used to say it could happen. I got to tell you guys, I would not claim to be PJ. I would not claim to be the great PJ from Angels in the Outfield. But what I will tell you is I'm starting to feel a little bit like PJ. And I'm looking at those playoff standings. I'm looking at who the Flyers still have to play. I'm looking at a team that just went 3-0-0 on a West Coast swing and had been pretty much given no chance of being able to do it. And I got to tell you, I'm starting to say, guys, it could happen. And on that, it's the end of today's show. Thank you for joining me over on YouTube, Facebook, and X. If you like the show and the podcast feed, good news, it's already there. For this time, it's already there. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Do me a favor, if you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified whenever we go live with a new episode. And don't forget, if you're perusing, if you're doom scrolling on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or maybe even TikTok, and you see my five head appear on your feed with takes on Philadelphia sports and more, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit a share from one of those pieces of short form content, send it to a friend, a relative, an ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, ex-whomever, I don't care. Unless there's a restraining order, then don't message them. Maybe like message their parents or like their significant other or their sibling or I don't know. But share the stuff that you see. It's helpful. You can follow those accounts on all those platforms as well. I'll be back on Wednesday. Now, I don't know when and I don't know how and I don't know where. It's probably going to be a pre-recorded episode on Wednesday, but maybe not. You never know. That's why you always have to tune into the Russ Joy Show. You just don't know. But as of right now, the plan is for there to be an episode waiting for you on Wednesday. And if not, I'll communicate it on the Facebook page and on the YouTube page and on social media. But the plan is for a Wednesday show. So until Wednesday, this has been the Russ Joy Show. And I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Have a marvelous Monday, and I'll talk to all of you on a wonderful Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.